In the summer of 1924, Albert Ostman, a seasoned prospector, embarked on a solo expedition into the remote wilderness of British Columbia. Ostman, a sturdy man in his mid-30s, had long heard stories of a lost gold mine near Toba Inlet, a mine so rich that it was said to have made men wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. He was determined to uncover this fabled treasure. Armed with a Winchester rifle, a hunting knife, and a few days' worth of supplies, he ventured into the dense forest, unaware that his quest would lead him to an encounter far more extraordinary and terrifying than any hidden gold. Ostman was no stranger to the wild. Born in Sweden and raised in Canada, he had spent years working as a lumberjack, miner, and prospector. His extensive experience in the great outdoors gave him confidence as he trekked deep into the forest, setting up camp near a clear, bubbling creek. The towering pines and the tranquil sounds of nature provided a false sense of security, masking the danger that lurked in the dark. The first few days of Ostman's expedition were uneventful. He meticulously explored the area, searching for any signs that might lead him to the lost mine. During the day, he felt at peace in the wilderness, far away from the noise of civilization. However, as night fell, a series of strange occurrences began to unsettle him. Each night, as Ostman settled into his sleeping bag, he heard rustling noises outside his tent. Initially, he dismissed these sounds as the nocturnal activities of forest creatures. But as the noises grew more frequent and pronounced, a sense of unease began to creep over him. It felt as though he was being watched by unseen eyes. To make matters worse, items from his camp began to vanish, food supplies, small tools, and other essentials disappeared without a trace. Ostman attributed these losses to raccoons or other curious animals, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister might be at play. On the fourth night, after a long day of prospecting, Ostman crawled into his sleeping bag and quickly fell into a deep sleep. The exhaustion from his relentless search had taken its toll. Suddenly, he was jolted awake by a sensation of being lifted. Confused and disoriented, his first thought was that he was caught in a landslide. But as the reality of his situation set in, he realized he was being carried away, trapped inside his sleeping bag and slung over a massive shoulder. Panic surged through him. He tried to struggle free, but the powerful grip holding him was unyielding. The journey, which seemed to last for hours, was a blur of motion and muffled sounds. Ostman could hear the rhythmic thumping of footsteps and the eerie whispers of the forest around him. Eventually, the movement ceased, and he was unceremoniously dropped to the ground. When Ostman managed to release himself from the confines of his sleeping bag, he found himself in a small, secluded valley, illuminated by the faint glow of dawn. The sight that greeted him was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. He was surrounded by a family of 4 enormous, hairy creatures, that being sasquatches. The largest of the group, presumably the male, stood about 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a formidable build. His deep-set eyes, glinting with intelligence, locked onto Ostman with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. The female Sasquatch was slightly shorter but equally imposing, her presence exuding a sense of strength and authority. 2 younger Sasquatch, about the size of human teenagers, lingered nearby, their eyes wide with curiosity and caution. Ostman was paralyzed with fear, but the Sasquatch did not attack. Instead, they seemed as wary of him as he was of them. They communicated with each other through a series of grunts, vocalizations, and gestures, which Ostman found both fascinating and bewildering. Despite the tension in the air, he quickly realized that the creatures had no immediate intention of harming him. For 6 days, Ostman remained in the valley, closely observed by the Sasquatch family. He noted their behaviors and routines, gathering as much information as he could. The creatures appeared to be herbivores, consuming a diet of roots, berries, and other vegetation. Occasionally, they offered him some of their food, which he accepted reluctantly, trying to maintain his strength while avoiding confrontation. The male Sasquatch showed particular interest in Ostman's belongings, especially his rifle and other metal objects. Ostman kept his rifle close at hand, a constant reminder of his precarious situation. He feared using it, uncertain how the Sasquatch would react to the sound and violence of a gunshot. Despite the tension, Ostman couldn't help but marvel at the creatures. They were clearly intelligent, with a social structure and methods of communication that were complex and nuanced. The young Sasquatch often played together, engaging in games and mock wrestling matches, watched over by the female, who displayed a nurturing yet vigilant demeanor. The male maintained a watchful presence, ensuring the safety and order of the family. During his captivity, Ostman tried to keep a low profile, observing the creatures from a distance. He noted the physical differences among the family members. The male's thick, dark hair contrasted with the female's slightly lighter fur, and the juveniles had a more mixed coloration. Their eyes, though animalistic, held a spark of intelligence that unnerved him. Throughout his ordeal, Ostman made several keen observations about the Sasquatch family. He noted their physical prowess and remarkable agility despite their massive size. The male, in particular, exhibited a level of strength that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Ostman speculated that the Sasquatch family had abducted him out of curiosity, or perhaps to observe him as a potential threat to their territory. He also observed their methods of communication, which consisted of a combination of vocalizations, hand gestures, and facial expressions. The Sasquatch seemed to possess a complex social structure, with the male acting as the leader and protector, the female as the caretaker, and the juveniles learning through play and imitation. Ostman began to piece together a theory about why the Sasquatch had brought him to their secluded valley. He speculated that they were a highly intelligent and reclusive species, keen on avoiding human contact but also curious about human behavior. Their abduction of Ostman may have been driven by a mix of caution and curiosity. Desperate to escape, Ostman devised a plan. He noticed the male Sasquatch's interest in his snuff, a powdered tobacco he used regularly. Ostman hoped that the strong, unfamiliar substance might provide him with the distraction he needed. One evening, he offered the male Sasquatch a pinch of snuff. The creature accepted it eagerly, sniffing it curiously. Moments later, the Sasquatch began to cough and splutter, clearly affected by the potent tobacco. Seizing the opportunity, Ostman grabbed his gear and bolted. He ran through the forest, adrenaline propelling him forward despite his exhaustion. He navigated the rough terrain with the skill of a seasoned outdoorsman, driven by sheer determination to escape his captors. Behind him, he could hear the distant sounds of the Sasquatch, but he didn't dare look back. After hours of frantic running, Ostman finally emerged from the dense forest, disheveled and disoriented. He stumbled upon a logging camp, where the workers were shocked by his wild appearance and harrowing tale. Initially, they were skeptical, but Ostman's sincerity and detailed account eventually convinced some of them that he had indeed experienced something extraordinary. Ostman's ordeal left him deeply shaken. For years, he kept the story to himself, fearing ridicule and disbelief. It wasn't until 1957, more than 3 decades later, that he shared his experience publicly. His account was met with a mix of intrigue and skepticism, fueling the already growing interest in the legend of Sasquatch. Albert Ostman's story was met with varying degrees of skepticism and belief. Many people found his detailed descriptions and consistent recounting of events to be compelling. His experience as a seasoned outdoorsman added a layer of credibility to his account. However, skeptics pointed out the lack of physical evidence and the long delay in reporting the incident as potential red flags. Cryptozoologists and Bigfoot enthusiasts, however, embraced Ostman's story as one of the most detailed and significant accounts of a Sasquatch encounter. They argued that Ostman's descriptions of the creature's behavior, physical characteristics, and social structure provided valuable insights into the elusive species. Some researchers even speculated that the Sasquatch family might represent a surviving relic population of a prehistoric hominid. Albert Ostman's story remains one of the most compelling and detailed accounts of a Sasquatch encounter. Whether you believe his tale or dismiss it as fantasy, it has undeniably contributed to the enduring mystery of Bigfoot. The remote valleys and dense forests of British Columbia continue to captivate the imaginations of those who wonder what secrets they might hold. Ostman's account has inspired numerous expeditions, investigations, and discussions among those fascinated by the possibility of undiscovered creatures lurking in the wilderness. His story serves as a reminder of the vast unknowns that still exist in the world and the creepy allure of the unexplained. So as you sit in the comfort of your home, remember that the wilderness has many unknown and undiscovered things that lurk within it. So the next time you venture into the woods, tread carefully. You never know what might be watching you, waiting to make its move.